What is up guys, OraMagi here, back again with another video, and in today's video, I'm doing something a little bit different. Today, I've actually been invited to the GBVS press event, that's the Granblue Fantasy Versus press event, and if you've been following me on Twitter or on this channel, you will know that Granblue Fantasy Versus is one of my most anticipated titles of 2020, and I'm lucky enough to be going down to a bar where I'm going to get to play for about 5 hours, and I really cannot be any more excited. But I thought, what's the fun in doing that if I can't take you guys along for the ride? So how about we get going? Ta-da! So we made it to the loading bar, and as you can see in the background, it's kind of noisy in here, but plenty of Granblue actually going on in the background, so enough of this, let's hop on back to some of that, shall we? I'll be quick with this one, but of course we've got to start off with the venue. After all, there wouldn't be a video if I didn't have anywhere to sit down and play the game. The press event was hosted at the Loading Bar in Dalston, which is this really cool gaming themed bar. It's not like a bar that looks normal on the outside, only for you to walk into a gamer's paradise. Not at all. It's made very obvious from the mural of the iconic Borderlands Psycho adorning the wall. If I had to describe the interior in one word, games. Duh. Games, games, games. And not just because of the 6 huge TVs that were in place for the GBVS event. They have drinks named after very popular games such as the Sky Rum and the Pokemon Let's Slow. There's also a huge bookcase at the back of the bar with all sorts of board games and memorabilia from so many different areas of gaming history. It's all really pretty cool. There's even a downstairs area that I didn't get to record because it was reserved for a part of the event that I'll get to in a bit, but even that had a PS4 cabinet and a couple of arcade machines. But now that we're done talking about the venue, let's briefly talk about the event itself. The event was simple enough. Turn up, sit down, play some games. We had about 5 hours, and everyone who was invited was able to play Versus mode for as long as they wanted, and for RPG mode you had to book a 20-minute slot, which is what the downstairs portion of the bar was reserved for. I chose to not play RPG mode because I play the original game fairly regularly, so I thought that it would be a better use of my time to focus on the completely new aspect of Granblue, which, of course, is the titular Versus mode. So, let's talk about that now, shall we? Okay, before we get into the nitty gritty, let me preface this by saying that even though I love fighting games, I am by no means good at them. Just check out my Tekken videos.
Real human life. What?
Links to which are handily in the description below and in the top right corner for proof. So now, as I'm talking about what's good and what's bad about Versus mode, remember that it's from the viewpoint of a very casual player. I'm going to be talking about it more as a Granblue Fantasy fan than anything else. The starting roster is small, comprised of only 11 characters: Gran, Catalina, Charlotta, Lancelot, Percival, Ferry, Lohengrin, Latifa, Metera, Jetta, and Saranga. That being said, the roster size isn't necessarily a negative for 2 reasons. Firstly, because by the time the game comes out for NA on the 3rd of March and EU on the 27th, the roster will most likely be expanded to 13 with the inclusion of 2 new characters, Bubs the Chaos Bringer and Narmea, who are both slated to be released as part of Character Pass 1. We already know that there's an empty slot in the first pass, and we're getting a second Character Pass later with Belial. Even though we've already got my number 1 pick in Narmea, there's still a few characters that I would like to see. Apthuria, Six, and even though he's relatively new to the game, I would love to see Heisenberger included. Drop a comment down below, I would love to hear what you guys would like to see added in at a later date. Getting back to the current roster though, the second reason why I said that its small size isn't necessarily bad is because each character does an excellent job of covering the established archetypes that almost all modern fighting games have. You have characters that feel good for players new to the genre like Gran, who is incredibly versatile but also fairly simple in terms of mechanics, and forgiving when it comes to resorting to button mashing, especially in comparison to a character like Metera, who die-hard fighting game fanatics will immediately take a liking to, and not just for the obvious reasons. If you're picking up what I'm putting down here. Seriously though, a ranged character in a fighting game would most likely throw off a new player, but veterans will probably pick her up with ease and adjust to her mix of at-range zoning and close-up dueling. This was definitely the case during the event where most of the people in attendance, all of whom were much better at fighting games than me, played her non-stop. And every character is like that. You like mix-up? Lancelot is there for you. Like being oppressive? Percival. You like outmaneuvering your opponent? Jetta. Do you enjoy countering? Charlotte and Catalina. You want to get up close and personal to throw down? Ladifer. You enjoy being an indestructible meatwall whose very presence makes your opponent want to stop playing the game? That's Saranga. You enjoy throwing lots of shit on screen to confuse the hell out of your opponent? Lohengrin. Is there anyone I'm forgetting? Nope. No one comes to mind. The one word I would use to describe Granblue Fantasy Versus is accessible. Everything about this game is so very open and encouraging to players who are not only new to Granblue, but also new to the genre as a whole. This also applies to the control scheme. Most modern fighting games have simplified controls which make the daunting task of learning a set of combos a lot more appealing. With Tekken 7 for example, some characters have over 150 moves, and whilst that might seem motivating for some players who might attempt to learn all of them as well as their optimal use cases, some players may shudder in fear over having to remember even a tenth of that. So it's made so that you can hold down the assigned input and a small menu pops up which allows you to execute a relatively hard combo at the press of a button. This might feel good in the short term, but obviously you're at a disadvantage against an opponent who knows the explicit inputs for all of their characters' key moves. What Granblue Fantasy Versus offers is a control scheme that allows new players to be able to access every move a character has in a relatively simple manner, without alienating the veterans who have grown up playing on fight sticks and arcade cabinets, as well as having the traditional technical inputs that make use of both the D-pad and the square, triangle, X and circle buttons. Is there a collective name for that, or do I really just have to keep saying X, square, triangle and circle over and over? Whatever. Combined with that, you can also hold circle and a directional input for an easier way to access a character's moves. Even on the technical side, most moves have 3 variants, each one having a different effect depending on what you press. Triangle, X, or square. Okay, this is getting annoying. Is there really no umbrella term for these buttons? Let me have a look. There's no way. PS4 controller layout. Is there actually anything? There's got to be something, right? Aha, okay, official documentation, indeed. Okay, so you've got the D-pads and you've got the... Oh, I guess there's, I guess there isn't. I guess I'm kind of stuck with, just calling them triangle, circle, X, and square, aren't I? Huh. This is super important for a game like GBVS, which has been built up to be an esports ready title right out of the gate. I mean, the game was already confirmed for EVO before it was released in Japan. One thing I really like about the control scheme as someone who has invested and continues to invest a lot of time in the original game is that each character has 4 abilities that you can see below the health bar, which is reminiscent of the abilities that the characters have in GBF. Those 4 abilities also have cooldowns, so the icons are a nice visual way of keeping track of what moves your opponent has at the ready, and plays a key factor in how you approach each and every matchup. Some characters like Percival and Saranga even have buffs that are kept track of, so things like armor states or attack increases don't seem to come out of nowhere. It's a great way of visually communicating information without clogging up the screen or straying too far away from the roots of the original game. Visually and orally, the game is stunning, but that's pretty par for the course as far as an Arc Sys game goes, especially considering their track record. They blew the world away with DBFZ, and Guilty Gear Strive looks beyond mind-blowing. When it comes to the game itself, there is no more proof needed than that of the Skybound arts, which are some of the most hype-inducing finishes I have seen in a fighting game for a very long time. Some of them, like Lancelot, and I'm probably gonna mess up this pronunciation, Schöner Winterhügel, someone who's fluent in German can correct me on that one, do a really grand job of showcasing how cool, pun not intended, yet fearsome he is. Ladifer's is incredibly similar to Incineroar's Final Smash and does a great job of fulfilling the comedic niche of each character having a different facial expression to being dive kicked by her. There's even one for the JoJo fans out there when Catalina summons Arvess to finish her opponent with a slick tag team. Beautiful art is standard for Granblue Fantasy, and it's good to see that level of quality carry on to Versus. Artists Hideo Minaba and Hideaki Sawaba are doing God's work with the static art pieces, and Tsutomu Narita, Yasunori Nishiki, Hidenori Maizawa, Naoto Kisawa, and Azusa Chiba make musical magic happen with the soundtrack. Then again, this is all pretty standard for someone who plays the original game and has the opportunity to hear musical masterpieces like this on a regular basis. I mean, Have you guys heard Zero?
Worship him, I gotta speak to the world.
Or even The Ultimate? Now what you've all probably been waiting for, and arguably the most controversial part of the video, the tier list. As a preface, I'm doing this purely based off of the 5 hours or so that I played at the event, as well as a few clips and streams that I've seen in the meantime. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, there is probably some stuff that I am incredibly wrong about, but it's okay. Either this tier list is incredibly accurate and I make a name for myself as the absolute authority on all things GBVS, or everything here is a horrible mistake and I meme myself for content later. Either way, I win! We're gonna go along the roster list and assign each character a tier. I'll explain why I think each character belongs where and give my very limited reasoning. I'll include the final tier list at the end of this section, and I'll leave a tier maker link in the description below, right below the like button, so you guys can make one and at me on Twitter so we can get some discussions going. Even if you haven't played the game, make one based on where each character ranks based on attractiveness or something and send it to me. I just want to talk about Granblue with as many people as possible. Without further ado, here is what I think about each character in Granblue Fantasy Versus. Gran is an incredibly versatile character who's capable of holding his own against every other character in the game. I feel like he has great anti-air options, which means he might be good versus characters like Lancelot, Jetta, and Charlotta, who really like to perform mix-ups out of the air. I enjoy the fact that he's a mid-range character for whom even standard strings feel really good to execute. His unique action of being able to charge up an attack and hold on to the maximum charge is really strong, and it's even possible to use it as a movement tool in some cases, which is something I think people will need to keep in mind when they're playing versus this character. I don't think there's anything particularly bad about him, but I don't think there's anything overwhelmingly good. So for that reason, I'm putting Gran in B tier. Catalina is an incredibly versatile character who, I'm joking. I swear I actually do have different things to say about each character. Catalina is a relatively simple character whose playstyle boils down to two key decisions: counter or don't counter. Her unique action, Light Wall, deploys a shield which reduces the damage of the next incoming attack, but also automatically launches a counter with pretty decent range. This means that you could potentially use it as a way to defend against characters with an onslaught of ranged attacks like Jetta and Metara, but the fact that you can't cancel out of the counter, as far as I'm aware.
Oh, hey, yeah, OraMagi from the future agency. I'm working on the video. Just a quick thing I wanted to say. I'm doing some more research after the video. Turns out that you can actually cancel out of Catalina's Light Wall. So yeah, just wanted to point that out. Don't worry, I've double checked the script. It's the last time you'll be seeing me like this. So back to the video.
She has some quick jabs that can make just mashing light attacks feel effective, but I also feel that she lacks a way to hit hard like Gran, for example. Her binary playstyle opens her up to being read like a book by a better player, and for that reason I'm putting Catalina in C tier. To put it simply, Charlotta is just a better Catalina. I'm pretty sure that I could leave it at that, but let me actually explain what I mean. Charlotta's unique action is also a counter, but instead of reducing damage, it launches her forward past her enemy, which makes it great at escaping the side of the screen in a pinch and returning for a counter attack. The cooldown on it is relatively low as well, so even though you don't want to be spamming it, it's something to always be wary of when facing a Charlotta. Following on from that, she has great mobility in a similar manner to Jetta, who can dash up at an angle to avoid damage and reposition herself. One downside is that she's very close range. From what I remember, she has no ranged abilities, so characters who are good at zoning will have a field day versus Charlotta, but if she does manage to close the gap, you're in for a world of hurt. All in all, she's a solid character who's very good at what she does, and even better at what other characters, Catalina, do, and for that reason, I'm putting Charlotta in B tier. Lancelot is a fun character to play. He can seem incredibly daunting at first because I believe he has the second longest move list in the game, but on closer inspection most of them are just movement options. Remember that earlier in the video I described him as the mix-up character, and it's for this reason. Some characters you basically win once you get them locked into a corner, but I feel a good Lancelot should never get into this situation, or at least shouldn't be in that situation for long because he has so many options to escape. I believe he's the only character who can actually launch himself and then bounce off the sides of the stage to escape that kind of scenario, and he can even do it at adjustable heights for a quick escape that your opponent might not be expecting. Because of his ability to make the most out of any scenario he finds himself in, as well as being incredibly stylish, I believe Lancelot is worthy of being my first A-tier character. On to the next of the Dragon Knights, we have the Lord of Flames himself, Percival. Earlier, I described Percival as the character to play if you enjoy being oppressive, and I stand by that statement. He has deceptively long range with a fireball that crawls along the ground, and a huge sword that only gets stronger as you charge it up. Speaking of his charge up, it goes one step further than Gran's, one of his limitations being that you only have the one move to charge up, whilst Percival can freely charge, gain a stack, and incorporate that stack into a combo for more damage than usual. You always have to be aware of the EX abilities that a Percival will use if he's got those stacks, because that shit will hurt. He also has a unique command grab style ability which drops the opponent to the ground, leaving them wide open for a string of low attacks into a pretty nasty combo. I would say that his downside is that he has no real defensive options, arguably outside of his command grab, but that's more of a setup tool than anything else. But with how strong he is on the attack, I don't think it actually matters. He's basically the living embodiment of the best defense is a good offense, and for that reason, I believe Percival is worthy of being my first S-tier character. Ferry. Ferry. Where do I even begin with this character? During the closed beta back in May 2019, there was one character who was undoubtedly the best, that everyone was playing to ridiculous amounts of success, that made you want to quit the game if you ever matched up versus one who had any semblance of an idea as to what they were doing. Wanna guess who that character was? Don't bother. It was Ferry. Is it obvious that I think this character is busted? In case it's not, how about this? She arguably has the most control of any character in the game, being able to grab from range with her whip and chain that into some nasty combos, and on top of that, summon her spirits in both offensive and defensive manners. I believe she can even execute an EX version of her grab, which has the range of the entire stage. One comparison I can make is that she's very similar to Rachel Alucard from the Granblue series, where she can launch a little spectral rodent into the air, bonk you over the head with it, and have it sit on the ground where it will discharge an energy blast that she can combo you into. She can also glide in the air, which isn't the worst thing when you think about how many anti-air options are available to a fair few characters in the game. And to top it all off, her super skybound art bounces. It doesn't dissipate if you block it, nor does it go away if it misses. It bounces. 3 times! I learned that the hard way.
Why does it bounce? That's crazy.
Yeah, I thought I told you it's like that's not over.
So I could just trick you and maybe grab you before it happens, and then it's fine. I can make this mind games.
All in all, I truly believe that Ferry is actually the strongest character in the game right now, and for that reason, Ferry most definitely gets placed into a tier of her own. Ferry tier. Yes, I'm making this a thing because I genuinely believe she's that strong. Lohengrin is a character that I've seen online quickly become a fan favorite, with some of his interactions.
Ferry is so precious. Is it just me, or was I totally getting whipped on purpose back there?
One hundo. I'm guessing you like it rough? About that. You know me.
No pain, no gain, baby! Whips ahoy!
And of course being able to summon Yggdrasil as part of his super skybound art, which very obviously appeals to people with certain fetishes, shall we say. But he's actually the only character that I didn't play during the press event, so originally I was just going to put him at the bottom of the tier list. Then the other day I was watching some GBVS streams on Twitch, where coincidentally I've actually started streaming regularly again, so you should totally hit that follow button, link in the description below. And I came across Team Liquid's John Takeuchi playing some Lohengrin, and all I can say is, what the hell does this character do? All I was able to put together is that he's the only character in the game who uses assists, as he can call in his brothers Tommy and Elsem to help out, as well as being able to summon Lady Caterpillar to barrage the enemy with rockets and fuck knows what else. Both of his skybound arts look incredibly frustrating to deal with as the opponent, but super fun to play as, which I guess is the hallmark of a good character, as HPA and Yggdrasil are basically 2 different characters with entirely different movesets. He's also the only character who can recover HP too, so yeah, there's that. Again, I have very limited experience with Lohengrin, but it's clear that a good one will make you want to stop playing the game, and for that reason I think it's fair to put Lohengrin in B tier. Every fighting game has one, and every fighting game needs one, a grappler, and GBVS is no exception. Next up is Licht, the crown jewel of the Jewel Resort Casino. In comparison to the likes of Lancelot and Lohengrin, Licht is a relatively simple character. You close the distance, and you grab. You grab like your life depended on it, because honestly, I think it does. Befitting of her nature as a duelist, she doesn't have access to fireballs or the like. She's a very close-range fighter in a manner not too dissimilar from Charlotta. You never want to be stuck in a corner versus Eladiva because she's probably one of the best at chaining from a wall, being able to combo knockups into throws and quite easily reach the combo limit for heavy damage. She has methods of closing the gap, although they're not as safe as Charlotta's because they're not linked to a counter ability. Her lack of defensive options and relatively binary playstyle are pretty glaring weaknesses, but she does make up for them with an incredible grapple game, and for that reason, I'm placing Eladiva in B tier. Next, we move on to the fanciful yet flirtatious diva in Metera. Whew! She's good. She's very, very good. I think Metera is a top tier character for 2 reasons. No, not those 2 reasons, although those are some pretty good reasons if you ask me. Anyway, Metera, I think, is a great character because of her zoning and her adaptability. Let's talk about her zoning first because that's the more obvious one. Being a primarily ranged character, she has wonderful tools to keep the opponent at range, including a non-stop barrage of arrows from which she can fire from multiple angles, and butterfly kisses that she can detonate and combo for big damage. This already makes her pretty strong, but then on top of that, you have to take into account the second reason I think she's a top tier character, her adaptability. Metera's unique action allows her to immediately cross over into melee range, where she can proceed to then lay the beat down on her opponent. The action does launch her into the air slightly, so a well-timed anti-air will take care of her there before she can do any real damage, but she can actually cancel out of the leap, which gives her control of the situation and can make for an excellent bait tool. Once in melee range, however, she can execute a series of very, very painful jabs that are great for knocking the opponent up into the air, leaving them susceptible to further punishment from her barrage of arrows. I've also got to mention the interesting thing about her super skybound art. Being an archer and all, you'd think that would be best utilized from range, but no! Surprisingly, Metera wants to get into melee range before unleashing her super because the wind-up on it actually deals a significant amount of damage before getting into the art itself, where she proceeds to kick you a bunch and then step on you. So you know, that's a thing. I know you people are into that kind of stuff. For all of the above reasons, I'm placing Metera in S tier, where she rightfully belongs. All hail our Erene Queen. Gay next pose. Gay next pose. S tier. Done. Okay, all jokes aside, I think Jetta is a really enjoyable character that makes you feel like you're accomplishing a lot with only a few button presses. What I mean by this is that with only really Charlotta as competition in this regard, she has one of the most satisfying button mash combos, and she has plenty of cancels which give you a lot of control over where you want your opponent to be. One of her bread and butter moves is her Spear of Arvess, which launches her forward with a thrust, which she can repeat up to 2 more times while changing the direction depending on the initial activation location. That sounds like a lot, but basically you can dash forward and then you can continue dashing forward, or you can launch them into the air. Or, if you're in the air already, you can jump and then thrust downwards multiple times. She also has a counter, and I'm saying that with air quotes because it's nothing like your traditional counter where you stand there and wait for the opponent to hit you before doing something. Whilst that is one of the properties of this move, she can also use it to launch herself into the air, and it briefly gives her armor on launch, so it's great for getting someone into the air for a nice little air combo or getting out of a sticky situation. Another thing I want to mention is that she has incredibly obnoxious but powerful fireballs that can be charged up. You know how I mentioned earlier that certain skills have cooldowns that can be tracked? There's no point wasting brain cells on tracking this one because Zetta's fireball cools down after the input is made, not after it's been launched. So she can charge it up, and once it's charging up, it's already off cooldown. I don't know if that's a normal thing in fighting games, but that seems stupidly good for zoning. All in all, she's a complex but well-rounded character that will reward players who put the time into learning her. For that reason, I'm putting Jetta into A tier, definitely maining her and Metera. Well, at least until Narmea comes out. Last but most certainly not least, we have the hulking behemoth of a draft, Saranga. As we've reached this point in the video, you know that I like to try and summarize a character's playstyle in a few words, and Saranga is no exception. The word that I would choose to describe his style is damage. Holy fucking damage. I suppose it shouldn't come as a surprise when I'm talking about an 8-foot hulking meat wall who wields a technologically advanced greatsword from the moon, but oh my fucking god, Saranga hurts. Let's talk about why. His unique action is a charge up which grants him an armor buff, which is pretty good by itself, but it also has the added benefit of changing the properties of a few of his other moves when he uses them from this armored state. Naturally, he's very slow, so you'd think that characters like Charlotte and Jetta, who can outmaneuver him, or characters like Metara who can zone him, would be a fairly good counter matchup, right? Wrong. He has a dash which he can use after his power up to guarantee that he gets into damage range, and that dash also has an EX version, which means he can use it twice, so he's deceptively mobile in that regard. Similar to Gigas from Tekken 7, he also has a stance where he stomps forward menacingly and executes unique moves. Yes, I put that bit in there just so I can make a menacing JoJo reference. Moving on. And once he gets into damage range, oh lordy, you better pray to every deity that will listen to you, because Saranga will tear you multiple new ones. An optimal Saranga combo is capable of dealing 70% of your HP. Yes, you heard me correctly. 7-0. Granted, he does have to be at 30% or below himself because it makes use of his Super Skybound art, but still, that's a ridiculous number. He is fairly limited to the ground though, and of course struggles at range. His fireball is more of a knock-up tool than a ranged harass tool, and his armor state can easily be wasted by firing a projectile at the right time, either forcing him to spot dodge if he wants to preserve it, or waste it and start the loop all over again. Taking all of this into consideration, a skilled Saranga is definitely something to be feared and something we should all watch out for. For that reason, I'm placing Saranga in A tier. And that's it. There is my incredibly unfounded, probably horrendously wrong tier list for the base roster of Granblue Fantasy Versus. And there it is, my thoughts on GBVS with my very limited experience and a very, very unfounded tier list. I did warn you guys. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Of course, it makes me really, really happy to be able to make Granblue Fantasy content. I'm super happy that the game is popular and people are liking it. I can't wait for it to come out in EU, of course, on the 27th, and I will get my hands on it as soon as possible so I can enjoy it and, of course, make enjoyable content for you guys. So, of course, if you want more of this, you know, ranked climbs, all that kind of stuff, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you know when the new content comes out. Follow me on Twitter at OraMagi so you know when I get the game, because I will most definitely be tweeting about it. And of course follow me on Twitch, where I'll be doing live streams every now and again, you know, rank matches, playing versus viewers, that kind of stuff. Anyway, hope you have a wonderful day and or night wherever you're watching from. Also, I know the continuity errors in the beginning. I was wearing my Persona shirt and now I'm wearing my Naruto shirt. This was obviously been recording on different days. There's no continuity here in the OraMagi cinematic universe. Anyway, this is an outro, so it's too short. Bye bye, like and subscribe, see you later, bye!